Okay, so somehow the class did not get started in published. I must have. Thank you, Chandra, for letting me know. I must have not pushed the second publish button, so apologize for that. So let me. I think Zarina also called. Something must have gone wrong because I think I pushed the right buttons. Can one of you send me a text to see whether the class is on? I'll wait for your text before I go on. From my end, everything seems to be working okay. Oh, good. Okay, excellent. So, namaste to all of you. Um, we are just starting. I think we just missed the prayers, which you probably know by now. Let me see. Shrida has sent something. Excuse me for a second. Let me check the. Okay, good. Everything seems to be okay. So, we are doing the last of the 4 sutras, Tattu Samanvayat. So, the first one was Athato Brahma Jigyasa. The second one is Janmadyasya Yataha. The third one is Shastra Yonitvat. And the fourth one is Tattu Samanvayat. And so, in looking at the 4th sutra, just a second. Yes, Chandra? I think everybody is saying they can now see it. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Yeah, Chandra somehow still did not see it, so he may have to reset or something because Zarina and Shrida both said that the class is on. So we're doing the 4th sutra of this grouping of 4 sutras, which is the very most important part of the Brahma Sutra. And in the 4th sutra, we are looking at the word tu. So the word tu represents, in the words of Adi Shankara, Purva Paksha Vyavritti Artha. So it is to set aside the objections to the Sampradayic Vidya, which is Tattvamasi, which is the Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya. And so there are objections to it, lots of objections that, and we systematically are going through this. So basically, Brahma Sutra, what provides us is, I think, a systematic underpinning of all the thoughts that we have in our life about the veracity of Advaita Vedanta, the effectiveness of it, the method of understanding. So we have this in a kind of a random fashion depending on our lives and our thoughts and so on. So what Brahma Sutra does is to provide the technical underpinnings of systematically looking at various objections. So this is where it really provides us with the technical backing. Technical backing means that I think we have. Swami Dayananji was the one who really gave us this beautiful example that stuck with my mind, which is that you may be singing some songs, ditty, you picked it up from radio and so on. You enjoy it to a certain degree. But if you were to have a training in classical music, then you are on a different level altogether, because you are able to see the science of sound, all the ragas, all the ki sa re ga ma pa da ri sa. So there's a certain methodology to it, and if you're able to follow that, then the ragas constituted by those structure becomes much more enjoyable. So in that sense, even though it is Vedas, it is still much more technically sound than our normal life that what we have. So here, in tackling this word tu, which is the vyavritti artha, then we have gone through, Adi Shankara has gone through a very systematic approach on saying what are your objections to it. And so very quickly revising that, we saw the Bhatta and the Prabharaka Matam, which is following the Karmakandis, who says that really amnayasya kriyarthatvat, that because the Veda is basically giving you do's and don'ts, and so also doing it in a very technical manner, very sound manner, which has been given by Ishvara. So it's interesting, one of the things we should see is that in this Srishti of Ishvara, this whole creation of the world that we experience every day, both bhoga, which is the physical enjoyment of the world, and in that sense the word yoga, which is the purpose of withdrawing from it. So both of them, so this is what is called pravritti artha and nivritti artha, are provided by Ishvara. Both are provided by Ishvara. It's not as though you have to do one or the other, but both are given. And so this is what would be called, another way to look at it is what is called vyavaharika sat and paramarthika sat. So vyavaharika sat means all the transactional details in our life, dealing with people, making adjustments, learning new ways of improving our lives, avoiding things that are harmful to us. All of those come under vyavaharika sat. And then there is the paramarthika sat, where none of this really matters at all, and I am truly independent from any of the effects of the world towards me. So both of the methods are provided by Ishvara. So one would be called perhaps a enjoyment of the personality of Ishvara with the Maya Shakti, and the other one would be to enjoy the Swarupa of Ishvara, which is without the Maya Shakti. And so those two are sometimes termed in terms of Parameshwara and Paramatma. So Parameshwara and Paramatma. So both are given to us. So in looking at all of that, I would now very quickly revise what we were going through in the last class before going forward with this. And so what we said was that in Vedas, based on this last analysis of bhoga and yoga, of karmakanda and jnanakanda, etc. So one very good way to look at it is Paramatma has given us, Ishvara has given us a way to do symptomatic relief or to look into the disease itself. I think that's a very good way to kind of divide the way various technical underpinnings are presented to us in the form of Brahma Sutra. And that is that if you want symptomatic relief, there also the Vedas can be helpful. Kind of like, supposing you just do some home remedies. And so the non-classical music can be likened to something where you are not taking any technical help from the local pharmacist. You are just doing it kind of on your own because the problems you have may not be that troublesome and you can maybe face it. But supposing something that recurs again and again, or because of the severity of it, you may want to go to the pharmacist. And quite frankly, I think the modern pharmacists are quite well informed. Not only that, but the amazing, the breadth of medicines available in CVS's and Walgreens and so on, it's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. You have so many different varieties of pain medicines. That reminds me, my wife's sister's husband was an anesthesiologist in Ohio, and he practiced anesthesiology for most of his life. Towards the latter part of his life, he switched his career to pain medicine. So one day we found out that he has now left the hospital system and he's on his own and he is practicing pain medicine. So he said, that is very interesting. Pain medicine, just by itself, you have a complete practice. Turns out he had a very successful practice. Very successful. He said, I don't know why I didn't do this before. And so we were discussing that with him. And it is just amazing the various levels of pain and the various levels of medicines for those pains that are now available. All the way from simple headaches to pain caused by severe cancer. And so there are so many available in terms of, doctors and pharmacists and so on. So what I'm saying is that the Vedas says, okay, if you want symptomatic relief in life, then we know that you are dealing with life on your own. We know that. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not that successfully, but we know all of that. But suppose you want to come to us. We know much more about leading a symptom-free life. And this is called the Vedas. And here, not only is this life involved, but also the next life. So this is a continuation. It's not like next life, a series of lives. So if you want to continue to improve your experiences of life, you can in fact go all the way up to the heaven. And heaven is a very interesting thing because at least in the Manushya Loka, the one we are in, we have a physical body. And the physical body was born from our mother and father. And we were a little tiny speck of life expression, and then we became a person in the womb of our mother, and then finally, when that was all ready, then we took birth, and then we grew, and so this was all part of the body. And our experiences are very body sensitive. If body sensitive means all the physiology also, not the physical aspects of it, all the pranas and so on, and mind, the whole thing. And so our experiences are very body specific. But suppose you want something where your enjoyment does not involve the body, you can go to heaven. So this is all prescribed in this technical symptomatic relief in the Vedas. How is that done? So they say that in the heavens, the person is not born with a body. There is no body involved in the heavens. And why not there is a body? How can you say that? And what do you mean by it? What we mean by it is that if you look at the human existence in Manushya Loka, there, through your karmas and how you are provided a parentage and how you want to be born into a particular family, and the parents also want a child, all of those are brought together, and a no body is now formed. And it takes a while, it takes a long time for the child to become independent and so on. Doesn't happen that way in heaven. In heaven you have no body whatsoever. And yet you have a sense of enjoyment and experience. And so they say, how does that happen? This is exactly what we do in our dreams. So in some way, the dream experience that we have is an example of heavenly experiences. Although the thing is that our dreams mostly are negative. I was reading that somewhere because in the Western world they do a lot of research on the type of dreams and so on. So I was reading it somewhere recently that, and this is backed by Vedanta also, this is true, that most of the dreams are unpleasant. Most of them. So they've done a research on this. And so Vedanta also says that is generally true. Because if you look at our life itself, most of the life is unpleasant. The pleasant part of the life is much less. Happiness is very fleeting. It takes a long effort to have small amounts of pleasure, and it dissipates very quickly, and we are back into a sort of like maybe not an unpleasant one in all the cases, but not a very positive experience either. So the dream also simply mirrors it. There is no issue. Anyway, just going back to the example of a non-body experience in the dream. So this is how you visualize how the heavens and hells, for that matter, so both positive and negative. So we have 7 heavens and 7 hells. And then we are in the middle in the Manushya Loka. So in all of those non-Manushya Loka, it is like a dream. Because in the dream, you don't have the time to be born. There is no method for you to find parents to take you. You just suddenly arrive. And during this after the arrival, now you are having good and bad experiences in the dream. And then it just goes away just very quickly. So the heavens are like that. So the Vedas say, listen, if you wanted to have um, technically superior painkillers like Pammi's brother-in-law has, we can give it to you. They're available. Not only in this life, but even in the next life. But that all deals with symptomatic relief. That's it. So as we saw in the last class, and now we can go back to what we were studying after all this elaborate introduction. So this should be very clear to us. You know, we sometimes we talk in phrases that are so hackneyed that our understanding gets vague. So like when we say karma kanda, jnana kanda, gyana kanda, upasana kanda, etc., and we just look at these as words and so on. Really the understanding of that should be, so this is what is called adhyatmika vidya. So adhyatmika vidya means one which you can relate to, which is very true to you. You translate all of that into your own experiences and you say yes. So there I'm saying that the karma kanda and jnana kanda as the two ways of the offering by Ishvara, either as a bhoga or as a yoga, either as a pravritti marga or as a nivritti marga, are akin to, so that's really what I'm saying, symptom relief and uprooting the disease as a very science of the disease. So so none of our pharmacists will ever tell you that if you do this, then you'll be okay forever. That's not what the objective is. The objective is that for now you have a pain, and this is very good medicine for you to do that. Whether the pain will come back or not, I don't know. This is what the pharmacist will tell you. The Vedas says exactly the same thing. That really there is a karma kanda which is symptomatic relief and a very, very technically sound symptomatic relief. Kind of like a classical music. It gives you, you have heaven, but in heaven also temporary. We don't have any, this is ridiculous to talk about permanent heavens because it's a karma phala. And so it's temporary. But if you want to do that, so anytime you have a problem, you have to make a decision. And the decision is, should I just go to the pharmacist and get some really good medicines? Or do I need to go to a doctor? And as we were discussing, going to a doctor, and it's a longer process. But you can really uproot the disease from lock, stock and barrel. This is what Vedanta is. And this is an important thing for us to see, because the argument by the Purva Pakshas, the Bhatta Mata and the Prabharaka Mata and the Vrittikara Mata, those are the three that Adi Shankara has assiduously taken in his Bhashya on this fourth sutra, Tattu Samanvayat. These are the three that he has taken because they represent the main thought that represents the life of the people. So this is why in most cases people will say, happiness is generated by karma. you do things. And yes, you can get some consultancy on how to do the karma better, but that's what it is all about anyway. And so you do all of that, and that's all that is necessary. And so we say no. That's not all. There is another method, which is to seeing the nature of life's experiences and finding if there is a wisdom that can explain the nature of life's experiences, and is it possible for us to see it as a disease rather than as a symptom. And the Purva Paksha says no, that's not possible. And the objections that the Purva Paksha gives are very sound objections. As we will see, there's a lot of give and take, back and forth between Purva Paksha and Siddhanta. And one of them is it doesn't seem to work. And we say, what? Of course it does. How did you find that out? That it doesn't work. Were you ever telling you it works? It's difficult, but it works. So all those kinds of discussions are really at the heart of this fourth sutra, Tattu Samanvaya. So going back to it, I think we were saying that the Vrittikara and all of the other Bhattamathas and so on, they all said that the Veda is Kriyarthatva. It is all for doing things. And any time when you just have a Mahavakya like I am Atma Brahma Tattvamasi, which is a statement of fact, it is not a Vidhivakya. It is not a Vidhivakya. It is, either do or don't. But just to say I am Brahman is not a Vidhivakya. It's useless. And don't you know that that Jnanam itself is just a stepping stone for doing something? Then we saw, you remember all of this, that we argue to that yes, you are right. In the Vyavaharika Sat, Jnanam has to be followed by karma, like in cooking, etc. But there is a class of Jnanam where it is Praptasya Prapti. Or whenever there is a wrong impression about something, in those cases, the correction of the wrong impression itself gives you the relief. And we say that in Vedanta, the very fundamental aspect of that, all of our problems, is that there is some ignorance of the self, where I'm taking the body and the mind, etc., as myself, when in fact it is not true at all. And if you correct that, then all of the effects related to my experiences involving the body and the mind disappear. And so it is a completely separate matter altogether. It has nothing to do with jnanam and karma, etc. And so this discussion was going on. So then finally we came to the fact that, listen, the karma and upasana sections of the Vedas and the knowledge section of the Vedas require different adhikaris. This is a very important thing for us to see. Please don't mix them up. They are completely different adhikaris. They all depend on your your choice. Which one do you want to go? You want to go to the pharmacy school, or do you want to go to medical school? It's up to you. And if you decide to go to the pharmacy school, we welcome you and will give you the best possible education so that you also are up on the latest medicines for pharmacy. But if you feel that you want to go into the depth of the disease, please understand that this requires more study, more analysis, more specialization. And you may not, pharmacy schools I guess are like 2 years. You can go to, I think, I'm not sure, you can go to Foothill College or Dianza College and get it done with. For to become a specialist, it might take you 10 years, 12 years. And so it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But they are separate studies. They are not the same. One is Vyavahara, the other one is Paramarthika Jnana. So this is where we had left in the last class. Okay? And so here, the last person that we were dealing with is the Vrittikara. And the Vrittikara's main contention is, and so this is where the various aspects of sadhana, quite well explained in the Bhagavad Gita and all the other ones, where bhakti, karma and jnanam are the three strands we have to think about. Karma, bhakti or upasana, and jnanam. And to distinguish between them, the very nature of it, the limitations of it, is really what constitutes the treatment of the fourth sutra. All the sutras, but in the fourth sutra especially, this is what is talked about. So there, the Vrittikara Mata was, no, we understand. So the Vrittikara differs from Bhatta Mata and Prabharaka Mata, saying that I don't agree with you that the Jiva and Brahman are different. Because the Karmakanda says you are a Jiva, don't worry about Ishvara. You cannot become Ishvara. So you just try to become better Jivas. And hopefully one day you will have Sayujyam. Sayujyam means that you will get united with Ishvara somewhere in the seventh heaven. But right now, don't worry about it. You stay as a Jiva. So the Vrittikara Mata says, no, I don't agree with that. I think Vedantin is correct that Brahman, because if Jiva is separate from the Brahman, that means you are limiting Brahman. It's like a room space saying, I am the room space, but I am not part of space. Everything else is space, but except me, I am just a room space. So Vrittikara Mata says, no, that doesn't make any sense. It is really all one, Brahman and Jiva are one and the same. We agree with Vedantins. But, there is a big but. And so the big but is that for the Jivatma to attain Paramatma-ship, for a room space to become the total space, to fully realize. This is why Swami Dayananji used to shy away from the word realize. Self-realization. He says this is a hackneyed word and it gives a wrong kind of a thing. Why did he think that? He thinks that the word self-realization smacks of experience that I am trying to realize. Okay, alright, you're trying to realize. When will you realize? I don't know, I'm getting better at it. And the more prayers I do, upasana I do, and so on, the more I kind of have a feeling that I'm okay. So, but I am on my way, I'm not quite there yet, so I haven't realized, I'm not self-realized. This is the modern Vedanta. The modern Vedanta is experiential Vedanta. I think I was telling you this, I don't know why I pick on the same person over and over again. It just happened to be that one interview that Deepak Chopra had with the local TV station here. I remember this, so that's why I give this example. This is what is called modern Vedanta. Which modern Vedanta means just a wrong Vedanta, really speaking. And so Deepak Chopra was asked by the TV host, so Dr. Chopra, tell us about what happens when you have self-realization, or something like to that. I'm just putting some words in there, and so Dr. and Deepak Chopra was saying, you see, what happens is that normally you just have the normal consciousness. But when you realize, it becomes a super consciousness. And the TV host said, wow, yes, amazing. Thank you, Dr. Chopra, for gracing our program. Dr. Chopra is also not self-realized. He's giving some kind of I don't know, whatever. So, the self-realization, Swami Dayanand used to say that quite often. He says, please don't use that word. I mean, if you correctly understand it, you can use it, but the very fact of using self-realization makes you feel it's an experience. And it's not an experience. You already have the experience. It is the misinterpretation of your experience that we have to correct. It's really more of a cognitive problem, intellectual issue, nothing to do with experience. And so we have to really understand this sampradaya very well in that sense. So here in the where do we put upasana and karma and jnanam into it is what the discussion is. So the Vrittikara says, going back to the thread that we had, Vrittikara says, listen, I don't agree with Bhattamata and Prabharaka Mata that you cannot understand Brahman in this life. You can understand in this life. You can do that. But here's what you need to do. You first have knowledge, then you have to follow that up with upasana. This is what you have to do. And you must do upasana. And he says, and I think since I'm going through rather rapidly, covering a lot of things, he says you are saying the same thing. You are saying nididhyasanam. We will actually go into that a little bit more detail. So don't you say Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam? So Shravanam is Jnanam. And if you want to include Mananam, you can say Mananam is simply clarity of the Jnanam. Yeah, you may have some doubts here and there, and it's kind of like, it's a cloudy sky, and so you remove all the clouds and you now have a very clear idea of what the sun is. That's Shravanam. But you yourself say that, why would you even say there are 3 stages? So you're saying the same thing that I am, which is you do Shravanam, you do Mananam, then you have to do Nididhyasanam, which is Upasana. So we will deal with this hopefully today itself. We say no, upasana is different from nididhyasana. Not the same thing. So how that is not the same thing, we will do that. But anyway, going back to the Vrittikara, he says, no, you got to have upasana in your life. And this is the prevailing thinking of most people. Most people. That jnanam is just a start. But until you have ekagrata, a single pointedness of the mind, and you have some upasana and you have to do a lot of japa and keep doing it and so on and so forth, then you have moksha. So jnanam about studying all this and Kena Upanishad and so on and so forth is just a start. And then you have to do, this is prevailing wisdom. I remember I had this so fresh in my mind, my discussions with my own father. My father was not a very, he had not studied the Shastra at all. But he had just some ideas, he says. But everybody says that by you starting your study, etc., it's just a start. Then you have to do a lot of upasana and meditation and so on. And I was fresh from my 2.5-year course from Swamiji. And so I knew that was not right, what my father was saying. But I didn't want to correct him. So I said, yeah, you're right. We'll figure it. I just sort of weasel worded it and didn't confront him because he said, why start to educate this person who hasn't really done the whole thing? So anyway, but for us, we need to really understand this very well. So this is what the Vrittikara is. Vrittikara says, yes, you can quote unquote realize Brahman in this life itself, as opposed to what the Karmakandin is saying. But let me tell you, after Jnanam, there is another big step, which is Upasana. So, we say no. We say no. So, he says we have lots of different reasons for doing that. So let's quickly go through that now. So one we say is that, see, the upasanam on Brahman is not possible. Because Brahman, you can only do upasanam on something that you can visualize as something which can be articulated as a substance in front of you. Like supposing you have, supposing you want to do a upasana on Ganesha, and Ganesha is not available for you to in front. So what you do is you create a cone made up of turmeric and you put that in front of you and you now do upasana to that substance which is in front of you, and you focus your mind to saying, hey Ganesha, please, may I see you because I'm very desirous of praying to you, and I see you in front of me in the form of this turmeric cone. So this is possible, that you can do upasana. But you cannot have Brahman in front of you. So you cannot do upasana. This is what is called upasya. So vastu must be an upasya in order for the upasana to be even possible. But here the Shastra says Brahman is not upasya, it is upasaka. It is you, the person who is really doing it. So how is that possible? You can keep on just keying you can do upasana to yourself. So supposing you do supposing you do upasana to yourself. You can say, why don't I can visualize what I am and so on. You know what will happen? The upasya for this kind of self-upasana will be made up of your body and mind. That will be even worse. Because the Brahman is not available as a form. So you cannot do upasana. And so even you are the upasaka itself. So this is where in the Drikdishya Viveka, the very first verse says, Drigeva natu drishyate. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. Anyway, the second one and so on and so forth. Then the last one is Drigeva tu nata drishyate. It can never be seen. So it says that, so how are you going to do upasana? You cannot do upasana. And in fact, in the Kena Upanishad, what we have been studying as part of the Vedantic insights on Tuesday nights, it says, Yad vacha anabhyutitam yena vak abhyudate tadeva tvam vidhi na idam nedam yaditam upasate. Says that over and over again, all the verses. This is a common theme. Nedam yaditam upasate. You cannot do upasanam on Brahman. Then the Vrittikara comes back and he says, okay, I see your point. But here's my rejoinder to that. If you say you cannot do upasana to Brahman, I say you cannot do jnanam of Brahman also. So we say, why not? Because to do jnanam of Brahman, you also have to visualize it. What are you going to do jnanam on? You say, I want to know. So when you say, I want to know, and then you stop, you say, I want to know. So a person will say, you want to know what? What do you want to know? No, I just want to know. That doesn't make any sense. So when you say, I want to know, it's a very legitimate answer as to what specific thing that you want to know. Then we can deal with it. And so, Swami Maheswaranji had said, it's supposing you go to, he was discussing this on another, but I'll hopefully come back to it. So he was talking about, I think in one of the classes I had talked about Shiksha and Diksha. So Diksha is a direction. What direction you want to go is called Diksha. Shiksha is the method and all the details about knowing something or doing something is called Shiksha. And Diksha is different because it is a special kind of Shiksha where you want to go becomes important. So he gave this example. He says, suppose you go to a railway station and you say, I want a ticket. I want to go. So the person will say, go where? I don't know, but I just want a ticket. Person says, there is a long line of people. If you're going to behave like this, please get aside. What are you talking about? You're not telling me the destination and you want me to tell you where to go? He says, yes, I want you to tell me where to go, but I don't know where I want to go. So this is the thing, and this is a very beautiful topic. I think we'll look at it some other time. That until I know what I am seeking, total freedom, until I know the direct, I cannot be told exactly what to do. See, this is the fact in our life is that if you look at the normal life that we are dealing with, people are not happy, but they have gotten used to the fact that we are all limited jivas with limited possibilities, and let's just deal with it in the best possible way. And so this is where athato brahma jigyasa comes in. But in the midst of all this, if there is a possibility that is raised for us that I can be totally free, unlimited, that's what I want to go. That's where I want to go. Then you can go to the ticket counter and say, this is what I want to know. Do you know how to get there? And yes, then if the guru, is the ticket master is the guru, is knowledgeable, then he'll say, okay, all right, here's how you do it. You first go here, then you do this, then you can do that. But not otherwise. Not otherwise. So the Vrittikara says, how can you say that I want to know Brahman when you yourself says Brahman is not a destination? It's something where you have to go, something you have to do, something you have to visualize, like upasana. So he says, you have already rejected my saying that Brahman cannot be doing upasana. You cannot do upasana to Brahman. I now say that if that is the case, you cannot even do jnanam of Brahman. Isn't it? And so, here, the answer to that, Shankaracharya says, Brahma, if you say Brahma Jnanam is not possible, I say, we say, Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya says, it is not required. So the normal possibility, is it possible to do this, possible to know this, and so on, it's out of this realm. It is not required to know. What? You say it's not required? Then what are you guys doing? I don't understand this. Why are you proceeding? Why are you attending classes and learning and so on if you say it is not required? So then this is explained further. So by the way, just to just on the side, I think we are we'll be completing these 4 sutras soon, and so we have I have to make some decisions on what to do after this. So So in fact, I was going to plan to do this later on towards the end of the video, but since it is here, I might as well just say that here itself. Um, so I'm not quite sure after the completing of the four sutras where we will go. I'm hoping to discuss that with Swami Viditatmananda ji and Swami Tattvavedananda ji. And also there's been some things that have been done by Swami Sakshat Kritananda ji that I'm also going to be looking at. So based on all that, I will decide how many sutras we will do after the four sutras are complete. But even before that, what I plan to do is that this conceptual treatment of the four sutras, which we are doing now, when I say conceptual, that means not a sentence by sentence translation of the Shankara Bhashya, but just looking at the concepts of it. So this I will finish in the next one or two classes. Then what I want to do, as I promised you before, and I would like to fulfill my promise, then I will go back to the Shankara Bhashya and pick out particular sentences that reveal the concepts. I may not do it all sentences, but I will take some key sentences from there and talk about all of that. So that I think we will do. So in terms of steps, we will complete the conceptual four sutras. Then I will go back and pick out the Shankara Bhashya sentences that pertain to the concept. Then I will revise all the four very quickly so that you have a revision. That's always a very good thing to do. All the four sutras, starting with Athato Brahma Jigyasa, and come out with the key points from each one of them. At that time, the four sutras will be complete. Next 3 or 4 classes. Then in the meantime, I need to crystallize my thinking as to where to go after this. Anyway, that's the plan. So going back to this, Vrittikara says, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You are saying that it is already Siddha, it is not required, then why are you studying all this? Why are you going through all of this study and say, what are you doing? I'm attending classes. Oh, I want to know the Brahman. And if you say Brahman doesn't need to be known, it is not required, then why? It doesn't make any sense that you're doing all of this. So we say that's not what we really are saying. What we are saying is that Brahman needs not be, because the sadhaka itself is Brahman, then so the classical way of looking at it doesn't apply. What do you mean by classical way of looking at it doesn't apply? Means that you are visualizing it, you are approaching it, you are praying to it, and so on. Some portions of it may be necessary, but not the way we look at it. That's not the way. So then how do you look at it? What do you need to do? So it says, so we say, the Sampradaya says, there is a mix-up that has to be corrected. Some mix-up has to be created. So what we say is that Vedanta does not reveal the constituents of Brahman. So for example, in fact we will study this in a little bit more fundamental way in the Kaivalya Upanishad class coming up today. So some of it will be repetition. So Vedanta doesn't say that you are consciousness. We know that. It doesn't say that you have some happiness. We know that. It doesn't say that you are alive and present. We know that. So the Shastra doesn't give you anything that you don't already know. Then what? What does it say? What Shastra removes is the wrong notion that the room space and the total space are different from each other. That Dvaita is just a Brahma. Advaita is the truth of Dvaita. And we don't say Dvaita has to be removed. In fact, it's what happens in, I think somewhere there we will talk about this, that this Vishishta Advaita, Ramanuja's Advaita, all of that is not really following the truth of the Sampradaya. Because in Vishishta Advaita also says, yeah, you are kind of like Advaita, sort of like Dvaita, and you cannot do this until you have Videha Mukti. So that's one of the key things that Ramanuja says. You cannot be free in this life. You have to give up the body. Hey, that completely negates what we are saying. You say, yeah, no, we're very close to you. You're not close to us. You don't understand. So anyway, that's Vishishta. That's some part of the modern Vedanta that we have. You have to really see the purity of the original thought and stick to it. And you don't stick to it because it seems very difficult. Seems like unlikely. Don't do that. If you want to really go to medical college, then you just follow this. So what we say is, we don't say that it is not required because then you don't do anything. And so Vedanta actually, it is not, it certainly reveals all the constituents of you, who you are. But there is this wrong notion. The Dvaita is a notion. Advaita is the Prama. Dvaita is Brahma. That it does. That it does. And so that requires your own vichara, your own viveka. It has nothing to do with upasana and so on. This is what we call jnana. So, Atma Jnanam is not a new experience. It is merely removing the false imposition of dukkhitvam on myself. In fact, Swami Paramarthananda has given a very beautiful sentence, Sanskrit sentence to do this. He says, Adhyasa nivartakatve rupena shastra pramanam brahma bodhika rupena na pramanam. So Shastra, the pramanam, the ability for it to do something which has not been possible now is called pramanam, right? So pramanam means the ability to see something that cannot be done any other way. Like seeing a form with the eyes, you cannot do it any other way. You have to have eyes. So similarly, you need to have the Vedanta as a pramanam. And pramanam means that it must be a valid means of ascertaining the truth of something. So that pramanam is not Brahma Bodhaka Rupena. It's not revealing the very substance of it. This is already there. Then what? Adhyasa Nivartaka Rupena Shastra Pramana. Just to resist the Adhyaropa Apavada. It's the Apavada Rupena. So this is where all our acharyas and the whole Shastra says that here Nishedhavakyam, what it is not, naiti naiti, neti neti, that is the reality of it. Why? Because the substance, the vastu is already there. You don't have to create it. You don't even have to reveal it. But what you have to do is to reveal the false notion of limitations on it. That's it. So this is how the dialogue goes back and forth, and we will continue doing this until the fourth sutra is completely tackled and finished, and then we will move on to the other things. So with that, I wind up the class today. Sorry about the initial problems. Somehow I think I should make sure that it is broadcasting before I start. I thought I did that, but I must not have. So let's finish the prayers, and then we will see if you have any questions. Rahu grasta divankarendu sadrisho maya samachadinat sanmatra karanopasamharanato yo bhut sushuptaf puman pragasvapsamiti prabodha samaye yaf pratyabhigyayate tasmai shri guru murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Balyadishu api Jagradadishu tatha Sarva Swavastha Swapi Vyavritta Swanuvartamanamaham Ityantas Purantam Sada Swatmanam Prakati Karoti Bhajatam Yo Mudraya Bhadraya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Vishwam Pashyati Karya Karanataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharyataya Tathaiva Pitra Putradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bhurambhamsya nalo nilo Ambar Maharnartho Himamshuf Puman Ityabhati Characharatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat Kinchana Vidyate Vimrishatam Yasmat Parasmat Vibhoho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Sarvatmatvamiti Sputi Kritamidam Yasmadamushmin Stave Tenasya Shravanat Tadartamananat Dhyanat Sankirtana Sarvatmatva Mahavibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhe tat punarashtadha parinatam chaishwaryam avyahatam ashubhani nirachashthe tanoti shubhasantatim smriti matrena yat pumsam brahmatan mangalam param ati kalyana rupatvat nitya kalyana samshrayat smartranam varadatvat cha brahmatan mangalam viduhu ओङ्कारश्चाथ शब्दश्च द्वावेतौ ब्रह्मणः पुरा कंठं भित्वा विनिर्यातौ तस्मान्माङ्गलिकौ बुभौ ओमथ 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 असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ So good that you could persist and not give up. That must have been, that was interesting. I think Zarina had called me and he said, you know, it is not like you to be so late. There must be something wrong. She knows me well. I really try to be very punctual in my classes and really everything that I do. So her assessment was correct. I normally will not be this late. Anyway, I'm happy that it got solved, and good to see you all. And we will don't see any questions per se about today's class. So with that, I will hopefully see you next week. Om.